So grinding your teeth at night. Most of us would assume it's just stress, your brain dumping tension into your jaw. But when researchers studied this in a sleep lab, they found something surprising. About 80% of grinding episodes happen right after a tiny wake up in your sleep. Your heart rate spikes, your breathing shifts, and then your jaw muscles fire. It's not random, it's your nervous system reacting. And as a dentist, I find this fascinating because grinding is one of those things that show up in the mouth but actually begin much deeper in the way your body manages sleep. And that's what I'll unpack today. We'll look at the study that uncovered this link, why your jaw gets dragged into this stress and sleep cycle, and what the researchers say this could mean for your health. Because grinding isn't just about your teeth, it's a clue about what's happening in your sleep. And make sure you stay with me to the end because I'll also share some evidence based tips on what you can actually do if you're dealing with grinding yourself. So, what did the science actually show? Now, back in 2001, researchers in Montreal published one of the first detailed sleep lab studies on grinding, which we call Bruxism in dentistry. And this was done at the Montreal Sacred Heart Hospital Research Center in Canada. And here's what they did. They brought people with confirmed sleep bruxism in a sleep lab. They hooked them up to EEG to track brain waves, EMG to measure jaw muscle activity, and heart rate monitors. And then they recorded what happened overnight. And here's what they found. In nearly 80% of bruxism episodes, there was a microarousal just before the grinding started. That's basically a tiny wake up. Your brain and body shift briefly out of the deep sleep stage. And right before the jaw muscles fired, there was often a rise in heart rate, which is a sign of sympathetic fight or flight activation. Then came the grinding, a burst of rhythmic jaw movements lasting a few seconds before the person slipped back into deeper sleep. And there was also another team, which was led by Takafumi Kato in 2001, who confirmed this in clinical neurophysiology. And I've linked all these studies in the description. And what they showed is 86% of bruxism episodes were linked to arousals and accompanied by heart rate acceleration. Their conclusion was clear. Sleep bruxism isn't random muscle activity, it's tied directly to arousal responses in the nervous system. And here's where things started to get interesting, because it suggests that bruxism might actually be your body's way of coping with unstable sleep, not just stress during the day. So, in that Montreal sleep study we just looked at, the sequence was really clear. The brain flickers awake first, and then the heart rate jumps, and then the jaw muscles fire. And this tells us that grinding isn't random at all. It's part of your body's arousal response during sleep. But this leaves the question, why the jaw? Why would your nervous system pull the chewing muscles into this burst of activity? And the researchers suggested a few explanations for this. And one of the explanations is called arousal reflex. And when you shift out of deep sleep, even for just a few seconds, your nervous system activates. The brain shows a burst of activity, your heart rate jumps, and your breathing changes. And for most people, those changes pass without you even noticing. But in some people, certain muscle groups also fire during this movement. And if your jaw muscles are part of this response, the result is a brief clench or grinding episode. And another explanation is something called the airway defense hypothesis. And the idea is the airway starts to narrow during sleep, so small movements of the jaw or tongue could help reopen it. And by pushing the jaw or tongue slightly forward, the airway becomes just wide enough to make breathing easier again. And this doesn't seem to happen to everyone, and the research in this is still developing, but the studies suggest that people who grind bruxism might occasionally act as a protective reflex against airway instability. And of course, stress plays a part, not by causing grinding all night, but by making your system more jumpy. If you're wired from stress, caffeine, nicotine, alcohol, your nervous system reacts more strongly during these microarousals, and your jaw is more likely to join in. So, those are the main ideas researchers use to explain why grinding happens, whether it's just a spillover reflex or a way of keeping the airway open or a system more reactive to stress. But the real question is this: even if we understand why this happens, what does it mean for your health? Because grinding doesn't just affect your teeth, it can tell a lot about the quality of your sleep. So, if grinding is part of your arousal response, why should you care? Because those little bursts aren't just hard on your teeth, they can tell a lot about the bigger picture about the quality of your sleep. And the first thing here is the dental side. And this is the obvious part. Night after night, grinding wears down the enamel, the protective shell of your teeth. It can chip, crack fillings, it can strain the jaw joints. And over time, people may wake up with more sensitive teeth, jaw tension, or even morning headaches. And that's why us as dentists, we often just end up focusing on protecting the teeth, and that's only part of the bigger picture. And the second thing is sleep quality. And the more important part is what it means for your sleep. Every grinding episode is linked with microarousal, which is a little disruption that pulls you out of deeper sleep. And the more arousals, the more fragmented your night becomes. And that means you can spend 7 or 8 hours in bed, but still wake up unrefreshed because your body never stayed in the deeper restorative sleep stages long enough. And the third thing is stress chemistry. Now, each of those arousals also comes with a spike in your fight or flight system. So there is some research that found that sympathetic activity, which is basically the stress branch of your nervous system, that ramps up around bruxism episodes. And that means bursts of adrenaline, faster heart rate, and more inflammatory stress chemistry happening over and over while you sleep. And over time, that kind of nighttime stress load can contribute to fatigue and higher inflammation in the body. And the fourth thing is it could be a possible warning sign. And I don't know if you remember the idea of the airway defense system. If grinding sometimes acts to reopen the airway, then in certain people, it could be a sign of unstable breathing. Things like snoring or even mild sleep apnea. And that doesn't mean grinding equals sleep apnea, but if you grind, you wake up tired, and someone notices you snore or pause in breathing, researchers say it's worth taking seriously. So if grinding is a signal, what does the research suggest you can actually do about it? And the first thing you can do is protect your teeth. And we dentists often recommend something called a custom-made night guard, which is an appliance that cushions your teeth. And it doesn't really stop the grinding itself, but it prevents the enamel from wearing down and reducing the risk of chips and cracks. And I would think of it more like a seatbelt. It doesn't prevent the accident, but it reduces the damage. And the second thing is to identify the triggers. Now, studies show that bruxism episodes increase when the body is more prone to arousals. And that means there are certain risk factors that come into play here. So, stress, for example, which is a chronic tension that makes your nervous system more reactive. Stimulants like caffeine, nicotine, alcohol before bed can destabilize sleep, and nasal or airway issues. If the nose is blocked, sleep becomes more fragmented. And addressing these factors can sometimes reduce the frequency of grinding episodes. And the third thing is to see the bigger picture. Now, the important point is this: grinding sometimes can be a clue that there is more going on with your sleep. If you grind and you wake up tired, or someone notices you snore heavily, or you stop breathing during the night, then that's when a medical evaluation is advised. Because in those cases, grinding might just be your body's way of signaling unstable breathing. The fourth thing is lifestyle balance. So, winding down before bed, avoiding stimulants late at night, and stress management techniques all reduce nervous system overactivity. It won't eliminate the grinding entirely, but it can lower the number of arousals and make sleep more stable. So grinding isn't random. It's a signal that your sleep may be disrupted, not just a dental issue. Protecting the teeth matters, but the bigger picture is what it says about your sleep. And I really hope you got some value out of this video, and thank you for watching.